The storm should have killed her. That was Callen Thorne's first thought when he saw the shape buried in the snow, barely a lump against the white death swallowing the Montana mountains. The blizzard wasn't weather, it was rage. A living thing clawing at his face, stealing air from his lungs, burying valleys under frozen graves. He'd been riding for hours checking his scattered cattle. 2 calves frozen stiff. A yearling buried to its neck. Nothing but loss. He was turning back when his horse stopped dead, ears flat, snorting terror. Through the white blur he saw it. Not a rock, not brush, a stagecoach, fancy, the kind city folks used, overturned, broken clean through. A trunk lay split open, silk dresses frozen like stiff flags in the snow. A dead horse beside it, legs pointing at the gray sky. Then he saw the drag marks. Someone had crawled away. Before we continue, I have to ask, are you feeling this? If your heart is already racing, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. Tokyo at sunrise, London at midnight, Brazil in the afternoon. Every comment reminds me that we're building something special here. And if you want more stories that hit this hard, subscribe now. You won't regret it. Now back to the story. He followed the trail until he found her. A woman curled in a drift like a broken bird, face down, already half buried. He rolled her over and the air punched from his chest. Young, skin pale blue, eyelashes frozen together, fine wool coat torn open, useless. She looked like she'd stepped from a parlor straight into hell's mouth. Callen pressed bare fingers to her neck, prayed, found a miracle, a weak flutter, barely there. "Come on," he muttered through chattering teeth. "You're not dying today." He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her. The wind hit him like a blade, but he ignored it. Getting her onto his horse was a fight. The mare reared, panicked. He spoke low and steady until she calmed. He lifted the woman sideways across the saddle and climbed up behind her, pulling her tight against his chest. The ride back felt endless. His shirt was no match for the storm. Cold chewed into his bones. Her body felt colder, like holding winter itself. When he finally saw his cabin through the swirling white, it looked like salvation. He fell through the door with her in his arms and kicked it shut. The sudden quiet made his ears ring. He laid her on the bearskin rug near the hearth, hands shaking as he lit a fire. When flames caught, he turned back to her, fingers white, boots frozen solid, lips cracked and blue. She looked like she'd already crossed into death and was only half returning. Callen knew frostbite. He knew what it took from a person. He cut away her boots, her silk stockings, her soaked layers. Kept his eyes low, working fast because cold didn't care about modesty. Wrapped her in every blanket he owned, forced whiskey between her lips, melted snow, rubbed her frozen hands and feet until painful red returned. Hours passed, storm crushed the world outside. Inside, fire grew steady, cabin warmed. Callen sat in his single chair, coffee in hand, watching her face, breathing shallow, a whisper of life. Near dusk, her eyelids fluttered. She gasped awake, eyes wide with fear. "Where am I?" Her voice cracked. "My cabin," Callen said softly, "found you in the snow." She stared at him, his untrimmed beard, scarred hands, rifle on the wall. Her eyes darted around the small room. "My driver," she whispered. "The guards." "No sign of anyone," he answered. "Storm covered everything." She swallowed hard, her voice shaking. "I can't pay you." Callen looked away, jaw tightening. "Wasn't asking." She drank the hot broth he offered with trembling hands. Her fingers were blistered purple at the tips. When he asked her name, she hesitated, long pause. "Elena," she said. It was a lie. He heard it clear as a gunshot, but he let it go. "You're safe here, Elena," he said quietly. "Storms got us snowed in for days." But safe wasn't the word for the tension filling his small cabin. She watched him like he was a wolf packing too close. He moved quietly, used to silence, but her presence filled the room in a way he didn't know how to handle. Night fell. Wind slammed the walls. Callen laid his bedroll near the door and told her to take the bunk. "I can't," she whispered. "It's yours." "You're sick," he said. "Take it." Later, he woke to her voice, soft, broken, tangled in fever. She whispered a name through the dark. "Redmont, they took it, the ranch." She gasped awake, wild with fear, trying to scramble away from him. He steadied her gently. "You're dreaming," he said. "You're safe." Her shaking slowly eased. She leaned against him without thinking, her head resting on his chest. Callen froze, then let his hand rest on her back. She felt small, fragile, human. She fell asleep against him like that. Outside, the storm screamed. Inside, two strangers held onto the only warmth they had left. Morning came slow, light gray and cold as old tin. Elena was sitting upright on the bunk, wrapped in blankets, watching Callen with sharp, guarded eyes. The fever was gone, replaced by frightened awareness. She wasn't the half-frozen girl he'd carried in. She was awake, thinking, measuring every detail of this tiny cabin and the stranger who'd saved her life. Callen grunted a greeting and stirred the fire. Storm hadn't eased. Wind beat the walls like fists. "Coffee's hot," he said. "Thank you, Callen," she replied, voice steadier than before. Her hands trembled as she sipped from the tin cup. Small, delicate. She wasn't built for this land. "Where exactly are we?" she asked. 40 miles north of Bozeman, he said, adding wood to the fire. Storm buried the pass. Nothing's moving for days. Her face fell. She stared into flames, jaw clenching. The storm trapped her in more ways than one. By midday, she finally spoke more freely. They were forced together, same quiet room, same fire, same uneasy air. "I was traveling to Bozeman," she said, sewing a tear in her skirt with supplies he'd given her, stitches tiny and perfect. "Alone?" Callen asked. "No, I had a driver and a guard." She paused. "What happened?" She swallowed hard. Needle stopped. "We were ambushed, 3 men. They shot the driver first. My guard fired back, but they pushed the carriage off the trail." Her voice shook. "I ran, don't even remember how far, thought they were behind me." Callen listened silently. He knew what fear like that did to a person. He'd lived with it for years. "You ran," he said quietly. "That's why you're alive." She looked at his face, searching for judgment, found none. Storm raged all day. By evening, cabin felt smaller than ever. Callen sat sharpening his knife. Elena mended clothes. Snow piled high against the window. Then she added quietly, "My father passed 2 months ago." Didn't look up. "He left me his ranch." Callen froze. A woman owning a ranch wasn't common, and her clothes, her voice, her manners. This wasn't any small rancher's daughter, but she hadn't said the ranch name. She guarded that like it was the last warm ember of her life. "Foreman named Garrett," she whispered. "He said my father promised him the ranch. When I refused to sign it over, he turned the men against me. I left to get the territorial marshal." Callen watched her trembling hands. She looked small, but her voice had steel in it. "You're running from him," he said. She nodded. Next morning, the storm finally stopped. Silence fell heavy and bright. Snow drifts taller than a man. World outside was a smooth white wasteland. "It's beautiful," Elena whispered. "It's deadly," Callen said. Then they heard it, a long rising howl. Wolves. Callen loaded his rifle. "Stay inside. Don't open that door unless you hear my voice." Fear flashed in her eyes. "There's too many." "Doesn't matter. They'll come for the mule. If I lose that, we're stuck here forever." Before she could answer, he stepped out into the blue snow, disappearing around the corner. She rushed to the window, breath fogging the frost. Couldn't see anything, just pale shadows, the shed half buried under snow. Then chaos broke loose. A mule screaming, rifle shot cracking like thunder, deep snarls, snow flying in violent bursts. "Callen," she cried, but her voice was swallowed by wind. More snarls, a man's grunt, heavy thud, then silence. Long, awful silence, a knock, weak, struggling. "Elena," Callen gasped through the wood, "open the door." She tore the bar loose and pulled it open. He fell inside. Snow and blood covered him. Left arm hung useless, torn open by a wolf's bite. The sight twisted her stomach. "It's nothing," he muttered. "That's not nothing," she said sharply, grabbing his shoulders. "Sit down," he obeyed. She worked fast, hands moving quicker than she thought she could. Poured whiskey straight onto the wound. Fingers pressed torn flesh together. He hissed in pain, whole body tight but didn't pull away. "You got the mule?" she asked, tying the bandage tight. "Yeah," he muttered. "Got one of the wolves too." She looked up at him, her face close to his. Firelight flickered over their shadows. His breath brushed her cheek. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, fear, gratitude, something deeper neither wanted to name. His hand slid over hers. Warm, rough, she froze. He seemed to realize what he was doing and pulled away quickly. "It'll heal," he said, clearing his throat. Night fell heavy. They tried to sleep, but the storm had changed everything. They were no longer strangers, not truly. Near midnight, he woke to find her standing by the frost-covered window, staring at moonlit snow. Shoulders tense, breath slow. "You're safe here," he said softly. She turned her head, eyes meeting his. "I don't think I've been safe for a very long time." He didn't know what to say, so he didn't. She walked back to the cot. When she passed him, her hand brushed his good shoulder. A small touch. But it was enough. Outside, the world was frozen white. Inside, something warm had begun to thaw. The next 2 days passed in strange mix of silence and tension. Storm had ended, but the world outside was still buried under walls of snow. Callen checked the cattle and the ridge while Elena tended fire, cleaned dishes, and waited. When he returned that afternoon, he wasn't the same man who'd left. He was pale, breathless. He dropped a small frozen leather tag on the table. Elena picked it up with shaking fingers. The name carved into it stole her breath. Garrett. Her face drained of color, her secret, the one she'd tried to hide in a lie, broke open inside her chest. "He found me," she whispered. Callen looked at her, truth already in his eyes. "Who are you really?" She sank onto the stool, body folding in fear and exhaustion. "My name is Elena Redmont." The room went silent. Every rancher in Montana knew that name. The Redmont Ranch wasn't just land, it was power, it was law. It shaped the whole valley. Callen felt the world tilt. He'd saved a stranger in a blizzard, but she wasn't a stranger at all. Elena lifted her eyes, tears spilling over. "Davis Garrett was my father's foreman. When my father died, he said the ranch was promised to him, tried to force me to sign it over. When I refused, he killed my driver and my guard, destroyed the records, left me for dead." She shook harder, hands trembling so badly she had to grip the chair. "They want me gone, Callen. Gone so they can steal everything." Callen stared at the wooden floor, jaw tight. He'd seen darkness in men, lived in it, but this was something else. He moved to the door and pressed his shoulder against it. "They'll be here by dark." Elena's breath caught. "Can we run? Not in the snow." His voice was low and steady. "We make a stand." He gave her the heavy revolver. Her hands trembled as she held it. "I can't." "You can," he said. "Point, breathe, pull." Together they boarded the window, loaded rifles, and waited. Dusk fell, turning snow outside into deep blue shadows. Voices broke the silence. "This is Thorne's place." Garrett's voice cut through the air. "Elena, we know you're in there. Come out, girl." Elena's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Callen stayed at the loophole, eyes steady behind rifle sight. "Stay low," he whispered. Then movement. A shadow slipping through trees. Callen fired. A scream tore through cold air. Gunfire exploded outside. Bullets slammed into cabin walls, sending splinters flying. Elena threw herself to the floor, shaking. "Stay down," Callen shouted, moving to the door. A heavy pound shook the wood. "Break it down." Callen held his breath, listening. An axe blade crashed into the door. "Elena, window," he yelled, handing her the second rifle. Next axe hit, and the next. Callen yanked the bar aside, ripped the door open, and shot the man mid-swing. Body hit the snow with a heavy thud. He slammed the door shut again, dropping the bar into place as more bullets ripped through the logs. "Two down," he said, breathing hard. "Four to go." More shouting, more gunfire. "Thorne," Garrett roared. "We'll burn it down." Silence followed, terrible quiet, then hoofbeats fatting. Callen stayed at the loophole for 10 full minutes before lowering his rifle. "They're gone," he whispered. Elena collapsed to the floor, sobbing into her hands. The fight, the fear, the shaking. Her whole body felt like it was splitting apart. Callen reloaded with shaking fingers, not shaking from fear, shaking from blood loss. "Callen," she breathed, eyes widening. "Your arm." The beast bite had torn open. Blood soaked down his sleeve. He sat heavily by the fire, face going pale. Elena rushed to him, grabbing bandages and whiskey. "Sit still." He didn't argue. She cleaned the wound, hands steady now, not trembling at all. She stitched the torn skin, wiping sweat from his forehead as he gritted his teeth, and stayed silent through every painful pull. When she finished, her hands were stained with his blood. She stayed kneeling beside him, unable to look away from his eyes. "You saved my life," she whispered, "and you saved mine." The tension between them rose hot and sharp. Fire crackled softly. His good hand reached up and brushed a streak of soot from her cheek. Their faces were close, too close. She closed her eyes. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, born from fear, pain, and the closeness of death. Her hands gripped his shirt. His good arm wrapped around her, holding her as if she were the only warm thing in the frozen world. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. Night settled heavy around them. She sat beside him, head rested on his shoulder. His chin rested on her hair. They didn't speak, they just breathed. Morning brought new danger. Callen checked the ridge and returned ghost pale. "They're coming back," he said. "More men." Elena stood, face white. "What do? We go to your ranch." "My ranch?" Elena's voice cracked. "Callen, he's there. It's the only place with walls thicker than this cabin." They packed what they could. Callen's arm was in agony, could barely lift the saddle. She helped him, hands determined. They rode out through snow, taking hidden trails, fighting cold and pain. Callen grew weaker. Fever burned beneath his skin. Elena held him upright on the horse, whispering to keep him awake. They reached her land by dusk and saw smoke curling from her father's house. "Garrett's inside," Callen said. She swallowed. "That's my home." He led her to the old line shack and handed her the rifle. "Stay here." "No, Callen, no," and before he could stop her, she walked out of the trees and toward the house. Garrett opened the door, laughing when he saw her. "Well, look what the storm dragged in." She didn't flinch. "I am Elena Redmont," she said. "You are trespassing on my land." Garrett stepped forward, hand on his gun. "Girl, you ain't got no land, this is mine." "No," a voice rasped. "It isn't." Callen stumbled from the trees, barely upright, blood soaking through his coat. He held a knife in his hand, body swaying. Garrett fired. Callen fell. Elena screamed. Garrett aimed again to finish it. Elena raised the revolver. Her arms didn't shake. She fired once. The gunshot echoed through the valley. Garrett fell. The remaining men dropped their guns and fled. Elena ran to Callen, falling beside him, pulling his head into her lap. "Stay with me." She choked, brushing his hair back. "Stay." His breath was faint but real. He lived. They returned inside her father's house. She cleaned his wounds, stitched him, saved him as he'd saved her. Days blurred, full of pain and long hours of nursing him back from the edge. When the territorial marshal came weeks later with documents proving Elena's ownership, she stood beside Callen on the porch. Two survivors looking out over the ranch they now shared. He tried to leave one evening, packing a saddlebag, believing he didn't belong. She walked into the barn and took his hand. "You are home," she whispered. "You are mine." Callen dropped the reins, and he stayed. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of hammering. She stepped onto the porch to see Callen already working on the sagging fence line. He looked up when he saw her, smiled, and went back to work. That became their rhythm. Callen taught her to manage the ranch hands, the ones who'd stayed loyal and the new ones they hired, how to read account books, how to make hard decisions. "This is your empire," he said. "Nobody's going to protect it but you." She learned to command respect, to negotiate cattle deals, to stand firm when men twice her age tried to intimidate her. Luther, her father's old foreman, showed her the breeding records. Young Tom Pritchard taught her about water rights. Sam McCall walked her through the legal documents that proved her ownership beyond any doubt. And Callen was there for all of it, not taking over, not speaking for her, just standing beside her, while she learned to be the rancher her father had raised her to be. One evening, 3 weeks after Garrett's death, they were reviewing account books together when a spring storm rolled in fast. They ran for the barn, laughing as the rain hit, and stood in the doorway watching the lightning crack across the mountains. "I forgot what laughing felt like," Elena said quietly. Callen looked at her, rainwater dripping from his hat. "Me too." Their eyes met. Something shifted, something that had been growing since that first day in the snow, but neither spoke it, not yet. The weeks turned into months. The ranch prospered under Elena's leadership. The cattle thrived. The fence line stood straight. The house got repairs it had needed for years. And every night they sat on the porch and talked, about everything, about nothing. About the life they were building together, even if neither would admit that's what they were doing. 6 months after the day Callen pulled her from the snow, Elena stepped onto the porch with her morning coffee. The ranch had transformed. It was powerful again. Respected again. Callen was working with the horses in the corral. He'd stayed true to his word, never drifting on. He looked up and caught her watching, smiled. He finished with the horse and walked over, dust on his boots. "Morning, boss," she rolled her eyes. "I told you not to call me that." "Elena," he said more quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "When I found you in that snow 6 months ago, I thought I was saving a stranger. Then I learned who you really were, and I thought I'd made a mistake." That a woman who ruled the largest ranch in the territory wouldn't want anything to do with a man who barely survived on 60 acres. He took off his hat, turned it in his hands. But the truth is, I'm in love with you, Elena Redmont. Have been since the moment you stitched my arm without your hands shaking. And I need to know if there's any chance you might feel the same way. Elena set down her coffee cup with shaking hands. You love me? Yes. No hesitation. I know you're powerful. I know you could have any man in the territory. I know you might not, she kissed him, stepped forward and kissed him right there on the porch in the morning sunlight. Kissed him with 6 months of unspoken feelings, with gratitude and hope and, yes, love. When they finally pulled apart, Callen was grinning. I'm taking that as a yes. That's a yes, Elena whispered. I love you too, Callen Thorne. You saved my life. And then you stood beside me while I learned to save myself. He pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. We saved each other. The territorial marshal rode up an hour later with news. Davis Garrett's entire operation had been exposed. 3 other ranch owners had come forward with evidence of his crimes. His name was ruined. Justice had been served. Your father can rest easy now, the marshal said, tipping his hat. You've done him proud, Miss Redmont. That evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and gold, Callen dropped to one knee on the porch. He pulled out a simple silver ring, nothing fancy but polished to catch the sunset. It had belonged to his mother, he told her, the only thing that survived when he'd lost everything. Elena Redmont, I came to this territory a broken man with nothing to offer but hard work and loyalty. You gave me hope. You gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to believe in second chances. His voice shook slightly. Will you marry me? Elena looked down at this man who'd pulled her from the snow on the worst day of her life and turned it into the first day of something beautiful. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, Callen, 1,000 times yes. He slipped the ring on her finger and stood, sweeping her into his arms and spinning her around while she laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that came from deep joy, from freedom, from love. The sun dipped below the mountains, painting the sky in fire. The Redmont Ranch settled into evening quiet. A blizzard had almost killed her, but it had also brought her the greatest gift of her life. The story didn't end with rescue. It ended with love, with healing, with partnership, with 2 broken people building something beautiful from the ashes of their pain. Elena Redmont, owner of the largest ranch in the Montana Territory, survivor, fighter, stood on her porch with her future husband and looked out at the land her father had loved. The land that was hers, the empire that was hers, the life that was hers. And for the first time since her father had died, Elena felt truly, completely, joyfully at peace.